Alaikum. Let me first of all introduce our well-known speaker, Professor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, former Vice Chancellor of Allama Iqbal Open University, a well-known academician, researcher, and columnist, and writer of many books. It's great honor for me to welcome my friend and colleague, Professor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui. Sir, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity at this webinar series of Punjab Higher Education Commission. And the topic is very important, ladies and gentlemen, teaching in 21st century. As we all know that we are in a new normal situation and a lot of developments happening in the society from online to offline education. And from that perspective, there is a new paradigm moving from teaching paradigm to learning paradigm, and what we teach or what the student learns. I think this is very important and critical. And all our faculty members who have joined in this session certainly are recognized for their contribution in the last year and a half, for uninterrupted contribution and activities related to academic programs and letting the students continue their academic sessions in their universities. So from that perspective, there's a lot that we have learned in the past few months, but there's a lot we need to learn and see that where we are and how we are making progress. And in addition to that, we have to also see the developments happening at the digital platform and in higher education in particular, and then linking up the quality of education, particularly with reference to teaching, learning and assessment, semester-based education, then outcome-based education, evidence-based competencies, skills, employability. And then, of course, in this global world, mobility has become very important and critical. What are the meanings in terms of education and the program learning outcomes, in terms of graduate attributes? So all these things are very important, and it's great honor for me not only to welcome the faculty colleagues, senior and the young faculty members, but also the vice chancellors and members of the Punjab Higher Education Commissions who have also joined in this webinar, particularly to mention Professor Nazish, former principal of NCA, Professor Gondal, Vice Chancellor, King Edward Medical University, Professor Attar Mehboob, Islamia University, Bahawalpur Vice Chancellor, and Mian Imran Masood, Vice Chancellor, USA, Lahore. It's great honor for me to welcome all my senior colleagues and also the faculty members who are contributing as a leader in the higher education sector. And of course, quality and compliance with the national and international standards is very important and critical for all of us. And I'm sure that at the end of this seminar, we will have a lot of new things that we are going to learn from our learned speaker, Professor Shahid Siddiqui, who has been educated with PhD from Canada and then in UK, and then he has served in many institutions, LUMS, Aga Khan University, GIK, and then Vice Chancellor Allama Iqbal Open University, Lahore School of Economics. So it's great honor for me to welcome and invite at this webinar Professor Dr. Shahid Siddiqui to talk on the very important topic of teaching in 21st century. Dr. Sir, very warm welcome, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Colleagues here, and I'm really privileged to interact with them. The topic I chose for this webinar is teaching in 21st century, and what are some of the challenges for us and what are the opportunities available for us. But can we, let me share my presentation. Okay. So this is going to be the topic for my presentation today, and my email is there, my cell number is there, and you are most welcome to interact with me and share with me your queries even after this webinar. Before I start with this webinar, let me share with you some of the objectives of this session. This is going to be a very short session, 40 minutes to 50 minutes, and followed by some of the questions and queries by the colleagues. But some of the objectives for this this webinar include to identify the educational challenges of 21st century, to define the concept of professional development in 21st century, to revisit the role of education, to redefine the concept of knowledge, to appraise the contemporary concept of curriculum, to compare the transmission-based pedagogy with transformation-based teaching, to design a reflective teaching plan for classroom, to demonstrate reflective teaching skills in classroom. This looks very ambitious, but I think I'll be touching upon some of these, and then we can discuss some of the important points in this presentation. Let me start with the biggest challenge we have. And I will refer to this book by Harari, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. I am sure that most of you have read this book. And if somebody hasn't, please get a hold of a copy of this book. And there is one chapter on education in this very stimulating book. The challenge for us is that the pace of change has been accelerated so many times. The amount of change which used to take place in years in the past is now taking place in days and in hours. The result is that 21st century is going to be very unpredictable. Imagine that a baby who is born today, after 30 years in 2050, what are the skills we are going to teach that person, that student? This is the biggest challenge for us, the teachers, because 21st century is very unpredictable, and we don't know what are the skills which are going to be, which are going to be irrelevant, or which are going to be included, added. So we are at a loss to plan in a very coordinated manner. 21st century is also going to be very competitive. Gone are the days when teachers without writing a research paper or without conducting a research paper would be getting promotions. There won't be any room for mediocre teachers in the 21st century. These are some of the challenges which are before us. I will start with a very interesting, a book which I read a long time back, and I'm sure that most of you have read this book, Alice in Wonderland. This is a story of a small child who is playing with her ball, and one day her ball goes to a ravine, and she goes after the ball, and she finds herself in a wonderland where animals are doing strange things. And there is one rabbit who is running all the time. And a mouse stops the rabbit and asks, "Why are you running all the time?" And the rabbit responds, "I'm running all the time in order to stay where I am." So that is the challenge of 21st century. And the implication for us is that we, the teachers, if we don't update ourselves, if we don't develop professionally, there is a danger that we are going to be irrelevant. And there is no room for mediocre people in the 21st century, as we discussed before. Then, what is required by teachers? That we need to relearn and re-perceive the outer world, because this world is changing with a very fast pace. And there is a need to redetermine the role of education. And also, there is a need to redetermine the role of teacher. So these are going to be some of the points which I'll be discussing. And this is, these, insights, these reflections I'm sharing with you out of my experience of working with teachers because most of my professional career is spent with teachers as a teacher educator. So I'll be sharing with you my own personal experiences, less bookish, more kind of practical. When we talk of professional development, immediately the question is, what is actually meant by professional development for us? So if we unpack this term professional development, there are three very important layers or levels of directions. One level of professional development is knowledge, that we constantly enhance our knowledge, especially in the field in which we are working. The second very important layer is that of a teaching skill, that just having knowledge is not sufficient for a teacher. What is required by us is that to have knowledge and then to have pedagogical skills or teaching skills to communicate that knowledge. And third very important layer is, level is that of attitude. This attitude is very important. And this behavior, I personally, when I go to these workshops, I always give a very interesting example of a cake, that some teachers are just like one layer cake, that they have just knowledge. And there are some teachers who are like two-layer cakes. They have a layer of knowledge and a layer of teaching skills. But there are some teachers who have knowledge and teaching skills, and there is kind of icing, and that icing is that of attitude. These teachers, they respect their students, they respect their ideas, they care about their students, and this aspect of professional development is also very important. So there is a need in 21st century that we constantly revisit these three levels: knowledge, teaching skills, and our attitude, because they are informing each other and they are interconnected. If you have just knowledge and you don't have teaching skills, attitudes, this means you are not an excellent teacher. If you have just knowledge and teaching skills, but there's problem with attitude, you are a good teacher, but you are not an excellent teacher. So you have to have these three skills to become an excellent teacher for 21st century. Well, now when we look at the situation in mainstream educational institutions in Pakistan, since all of you, have been through it and you have a critical eye, I think as an educator, I think that transmission-based pedagogy is the main issue. And this transmission-based pedagogy simply means that the teacher tries to transfer and transmit what he or she has to the next generation. So in this transmission-based education, the education simply means transmitting knowledge, values, and skills from one generation to another. In this paradigm, the role of students is inactive, and it's the teacher who is doing all the things. This is a very conservative view of education, and gone are the days when we used to think that education is just transmission. It is much more than that. One step, if we move away from transmission, is transaction, that the teacher says something and the students also interact. And then there is next step, that it is transformation. So when we talk of, when we think of education, it is basically bringing transformation in students' individual lives and later at societal level. Now, the problem with this is this transmission-based teaching, which is in vogue in most of the educational institutions. There are three big assumptions. Assumption number one is that knowledge is static. It is fixed and it is out there. And the second assumption is that the teacher knows everything. And the third assumption is that the students are empty vessels, are are clean slates, and the teacher can write anything on these the clean slates. These three assumptions are there, and these are the three pillars on which this building of transmission-based pedagogy is situated. I stop here, and then here I would invite your ideas and reflections on these three assumptions. Assumption number one, let me repeat, is that knowledge is static, it is fixed, it is out there, right? And I would like to have your, response or your reflection on this. What do you think? Do you think that knowledge is something fixed, it is static, it is out there? Or do you think that knowledge is, constructed on daily basis? So I stop here, and if somebody wants to say something, please. You can unmute your speaker and you can talk.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Rashid Saleem from University of Education.
Yeah, please.
Sir, since knowledge is based on data and data is continuously evolving, so this is not static, this is dynamic. And in this changing environment, new knowledge creation is always there. So this is not static.
Good, great. Thanks very much. Here is one response, and I'll encourage some other people who are there to please unmute your mic and come up with your own ideas about whether knowledge is fixed, static, or knowledge is ever changing and knowledge is constructed and created. Yes, please.
Dr. Sab, it's been, I think it's not a new debate. It's been a long time ago that we understood knowledge is not there, it's not static, and it's not fixed, because the changing, the shifting, and the ever organic type of the world that is there we live in, and especially in these days when everything is so uncertain, we cannot really say there is knowledge and this is knowledge. It's relative, I think, for everybody. It is constructed by every perception, every context. It becomes different.
Okay, so you are saying it's evolving, it's ever changing, and it's relative. Good. Can I ask somebody else, please, and before move on?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Fahil Hashmi. I would like to add that it depends on the domain. For example, if when you are there are certain domains, the certain fields which are rapidly growing, but then there are basic sciences in which the things are pretty much established. And although there is new knowledge coming over there, but that knowledge is something that the students will, in their research degrees or when they are doing their research, at that time they will contribute to that knowledge. But when we are teaching basic sciences to something to the level where the students are just entering the university or at college level, I will say that at that time knowledge can be thought of as quasi-static. So you have these bases to build, and at that time the bases have to be very strong. Okay, so and at that time you don't have you cannot bombard them with the new ideas. You cannot just tell them, okay, I'm going to teach you this model, but this model is actually not correct, and some new model will replace this model as you go to some other stage and so on. So this is my opinion on this issue.
I think it's a very good point. Fahil
Hashmi from Comsci University.
Hashmi. I think it's a very good point, and it's linked with the previous speaker's point that knowledge is relative. And second, as you said, and very rightly said, that depends which field are you coming from. Because when you look at the paradigm, positivistic paradigm, it is, your view of knowledge will be different. One final go on it, and then we can go to the next point. Anybody else who would like to say something? Knowledge, whether it's fixed or changing.
Yes, sir. Sir, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I'm Dr. Muhammad Latif from GCWUS University, Salport. Sir, I would like to add something that the answer about the assumption of knowledge is static or dynamic. Actually, it depends on the philosophy of education we are following. There are many philosophies of education like perennialism, like pragmatism, like reconstructionalism, like Islamic philosophy of education. So every philosophy of education has a different point of view. So it depends uh, on which philosophy of education we are following. Thank you so much.
Great. I think let's stop here, and there will be many more opportunities for you to interact. But thanks very much those who participated, and this participation and your response and reactions are going to make this whole debate more meaningful. Well, in the light of all this discussion, let me come back to these three bullet points: transmission, transaction, and transformation. Let me clarify that these three points are not separate. I would see them as epicentric circles, that their center point is one. There is a smaller, circle, which is the circle of transmission, and then the outer circle is transaction, and then outer circle is transformation. There are certain, pieces of information, as two of you said, where the knowledge is fixed, but then there are other circles, transaction and transformation, where knowledge is continuously evolving and constructed and made. So this is very important, that we shouldn't look at them as three different boxes, but three circles with one center. But it's very important that most of you agreed that knowledge is, especially in outer circles, is continuously constructed and created. And that is the challenge of 21st century, that the flow of this information, the creation of knowledge, this speed has been expedited so many times. So this was assumption number one in transmission-based pedagogy, that knowledge is fixed. As we have seen, that knowledge is not fixed. It is changing, it is created, it is constructed on daily basis. The second big assumption for transmission-based pedagogy was that teacher knows everything. The teacher is Mr. Know-all or Miss Know-all, right? Any response on this? The assumption was that teacher knows everything. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Fazal Ahmad from former Christian College University. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. The question, your question is, this is something that if teacher thinks that he knows everything, or she knows everything, at the time knowledge and understanding, they both get stopped there. Okay, because these are called fixed, intentions or notions, that where you start thinking, or anyone start thinking that everything is, he is the one. Because teaching, learning, knowledge, skills, understanding, they are all interrelated. Okay, we are teaching, for example, at the same time we are learning from the students, from our own mistakes, from new pedagogy system, everything. So if anyone thinks like this, it means that he has put some barrier, okay, and he is not ready to listen anything. And that is the major issue sometimes in any educational system, wherever we see or wherever we find some, witnesses there, that this is not easy to understand, to make those people realize that they are making mistakes. Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Faiza. And that's exactly my point, is that, the conservative pedagogical practice, which is transmission-based, the three pillars or three assumptions were that knowledge is static and the teacher knows everything, right? As you said, that this myth has been challenged, that there are so many other sources of knowledge. Teacher is just one source, right? And the third assumption was that The students are empty vessels, are clean slates. This was another assumption underlying the paradigm of transmission-based pedagogy, that the students are clean slates, are empty vessels. Any response on this? Yeah. I would suggest that those who haven't spoken, please, you participate, and because when you go home, you can tell your family that today I participated, I spoke. I would suggest those who haven't spoken, please, this is an opportunity for you. Yeah.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Sabah Khalil from Foreman Christian College. Regarding the third assumption that students are, empty vessels, I think this is absolutely wrong in the current 21st century, because the information is all around us, right? So students can get the information from anywhere. So their vessel is pretty much, filled up. The only thing that we need to do is now to see that how to now rearrange those things in that vessel. So students are not empty vessels, for my opinion is, but I do think that we do need some kind of mentors who can just tell them that, your vessel that has been, filled in by let's say, the social media and the various other media, how to use that knowledge to make it useful for them in the everyday life.
Okay, great.
So
Great. Thanks, Dr. Sabah Khalid. Thanks very much. I totally agree with you, because the modern researchers tell us that, the student's brain is not empty, it's not, kind of clean slate. Even at kindergarten level, they have their impressions, they have their observations. And the latest research tells us that even before birth, the fetus has impressions on its brain. So I think this assumption that students, are like empty vessels, clean slates, it has been challenged. And all these three assumptions: A, knowledge is something fixed; B, teachers knows everything; and C, students are empty vessels, clean slates. All these assumptions have been challenged. This means that we have to move away from transmission-based pedagogy to a new paradigm, that is transformation-based pedagogy, which focuses on bringing a change at students' own lives and then at societal level. Thanks very much for making this debate interesting and meaningful. So here we are. Revisiting the concept of knowledge. So it's very important that in 21st century, we have to revisit this concept of knowledge, that knowledge is not static, especially the two outer circles. Knowledge is not a noun, but a verb, and it is an action verb, right? Now we have to revisit the concept of curriculum as well. And I can see that some of you are coming from education department. So anyone can please give a very simple definition of curriculum, which is found in books. Very simple definition of curriculum. Can anybody help us? Yes, please.
Yes, it's a set of contents that we select for towards a specific end.
Right. Okay. So this is a very simple definition, that a set of planned or unplanned activities in educational institution. You agree with me? Set of planned and unplanned activities. This is a very kind of accepted and agreed upon definition of curriculum. But in 21st century, we have to revisit this definition, because in that definition, teacher's own role appears to be very helpless creature, that curriculum is given to him or her, and it is forced on the teacher. In the new paradigm, in the 21st century, the definition of curriculum is totally changed. If we look at the commonplaces of curriculum, we see students, teaching materials, school milieu or environment, assessment system, and teachers. These are the commonplaces of curriculum. And teacher is in the center. So the new definition of curriculum is that the teacher's interaction with students, teaching materials, school milieu, and assessment makes curriculum. So what a teacher does or say becomes curriculum, right? So this is a more kind of vibrant definition of curriculum, which is given to us in 21st century. And that puts teacher in the center. That teacher is not a helpless creature, but teacher is all powerful. Teacher can, enrich and enlarge a given curriculum, right? Let me share with you a very interesting story. That will explain what I'm trying to communicate to you. This story of my daughter, who is now grown up. At that time, she was in a primary grade. And one day she came back home and she was quite disturbed. And I asked her the reason, and she said that, my teacher in class tells us that, you have to make a queue when you go to some public place or some restaurant or some post office. But today, in the recess time, when I was in a queue waiting for my turn to get to my burger, my teacher came and she jumped the queue and she got her food and she went away. Right? Now, what kind of curriculum is this? This is what we call a hidden curriculum. And, teachers' own action made this curriculum. So it's very important that in 21st century, we move away from the old notion of curriculum, and we realize that, teacher is in the center of curriculum, and it's the teacher's, actions, and what teacher says is curriculum. This means that the curriculum is not a fixed and cold document, which is lying in the shelf, but curriculum is a very vibrant and a vibrant phenomenon, which is happening every day, every moment in classroom. Now, let us, after this, discussion, so far we have discussed, that the speed of change has been expedited so many times, that there is a need to relearn on, on daily basis, that there's that we need to unpack the notion of professional development, that it has three levels, that is knowledge, skills, and attitude, that we need to challenge the three basic assumptions of transmission-based pedagogy, that knowledge is fixed, teacher knows everything, and students are empty vessels, right? And then we looked at that knowledge is not something fixed. It is a verb, it is not a noun, and it is an action verb. And then we looked at the new definition of curriculum, that curriculum has different commonplaces like students, like teaching materials, teachers, school milieu, and assessment, and teacher is in the center. What teacher says or does becomes curriculum. And this is a very vibrant definition of curriculum, right? Now we are zooming in on 21st century. It's very interesting that in the past, when we used to plan our teaching, it was much easier for us because the change was not at that pace. Now, if we, look at, what is going to happen in 2050, I think it's very difficult for us to imagine, because there are certain skills which are going to be irrelevant. There are a number of skills which are going to emerge, and we cannot have a clue at this point. And then there is this mist of time in between. But I think there is an agreement there seems to be an agreement on some of the skills which are going to be very relevant in 21st century. And if we want our students to survive and succeed in 21st century, we need to have these skills in our classrooms, prepare our students in these skills to cope with the challenges of 21st century. This list has artificial intelligence at the top, and then critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, and adaptability. If you look at these skills as a teacher, because 2050 is going to be a time where we cannot predict things, what's going to be there. So the skill which is going to be very helpful for us or for our students is creativity. Because if you have creative faculty and if you have critical thinking, no matter how strange circumstances are there, still, if you are creative and if you are a critical thinker, you can adapt yourself to the new circumstances. So for us, the teachers, I think for our classrooms, it's very important that we focus on this skill of creativity, how we can make our students more creative. Because if they are creative, there are more chances that they can succeed in 21st century. And here, I'll show you a picture. And I stop and I'll ask you how many of you recognize this person or this book, or anybody who would like to tell us about this person. Yeah. These hands are up, Asma and Maha. Are they up by default? Or you? Yeah. Anybody who knows or recognizes this person? No?
Yes, this is.
Yeah. Yes.
One of the most famous African rights.
Who is this? Can you please?
I'm sorry. Sorry, please.
No problem. Can you please tell us your name, please?
Fazal Zahir. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. No problem. No problem.
Malcolm X is one of those people during 60s, 50s that was the person who coined the concept or put forward the concept of African, sense of liberation. That's why he is, he's among those people who came forward and who made African people in America in general, okay, and all over the world in particular, to make them realize the, importance of liberation, freedom, rights, okay, and creativity. Because as at that time when these people, that they realized, because before at that time they used to be called niggers, they used to be called niggas, okay, very derogative terms used to be used for them, and then they used not to be given any place. So he is among those that he is not only a political thinker, but also if African American philosopher as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Faiza. Normally, I give candies to those students who perform very well. Unfortunately, I can give you a virtual candy, but not the real one. But thanks very much. If you haven't read this book, this is one of the most engaging autobiographies I have ever read. Malcolm X's autobiography. He was born in a Black family in Harlem, US. And I showed you this picture because I would like to share with you a very interesting story in which I read in his autobiography. This story was about that when he was a small boy, his neighbors who were hunters of rabbits came to him and they asked him to go with them, right? And then what happened then? Let me show you the actual text. and I'll read with you. Can you see the text, please?
Yeah, Doctor, we can see the text. Yes.
No, I am reading it out for you. I know it's very small, but I can read for you. Okay. So now I gave you the scenario that his neighbors came to him and they took him for rabbit hunting. And, they were very experienced hunters. The old man had a set rabbit hunting strategy, and they had always used, that they have always used. Usually when a dog jumps at a rabbit, now this is very interesting, that they used to take their dogs with them. Usually when a dog jumps a rabbit and the rabbit gets away, the rabbit will always somehow instinctively run in a circle and return sooner or later past the very spot where the originally was jumped. Well, the old man would just sit and wait in hiding somewhere for the rabbit to come back, then get their shots at him. So ये एक सर्कल में जहां पे रैबिट पे जंप किया डॉग ने, ओल्ड मैन ने उसे बताया कि रैबिट ने दोबारा घूम के दायरे में वहीं पे आ जाना है. So those old men would hide near that point. But I got to thinking about it. Malcolm X tells us, I got to thinking about it, and finally I thought of a plan. I would separate from them and Big Boy, and I would go to a point where I figured that the rabbit returning would have to pass me first. Can you imagine that circle? That he went to a point where the rabbits would have to pass him first. It worked like magic. I began to get 3 and 4 rabbits before they got one. The astonishing thing was that none of the old men ever figured out why. They outdid themselves, exclaiming, "What a sure shot I was." I was about 12 then. So just 12 years old. So what actually Malcolm X did? He gives that, in a gist in his book, that why I could, get more rabbits as compared with those experienced people. And this is the lesson he shares with us. And I think that this is a direct implication for us, the practitioners. So he says, all I had done was to improve on their strategy. And it was the beginning of a very important lesson in life, that anytime you find someone more successful than you are, especially when you are both engaged in the same business, they are doing something that you aren't, right? So this is that creativity. It's not doing something completely new, but it is, improving upon the existing strategy. Now, here is the implication for us then in 21st century, that we need to revisit our role as a teacher. Is our role is just that of a technician, that we have certain, PowerPoints, other things, and that is it? And then transmitting ideas and skills to other generation, we are much more than that. And that is the role we need to revisit, that in 21st century, we have to move away from the role of just a technician to reflective practitioner. Right? And reflective practitioner simply means a person who reflects upon his practice, what you are doing. And in this case, practice simply means teaching. So I started off with the enhanced speed of change, and then we looked at the new concept of education, and then curriculum, and then need for bringing a change in teachers' own role, and then we looked at the 21st century theoretical framework and the skills which are required by our students, and we picked the skill of creativity, and then we looked at that That creativity can only be developed by teachers who are reflective practitioners. And what is meant by this reflective practice and reflective practitioner? A reflective practice is a way of relating to practice which allows the practitioner to think deeply and continuously about his or her actions, to examine constantly the groundings of the beliefs and values which underlie your teaching practice, and to consider the consequences of your actions as a teacher, to raise questions about educational practices, especially the taken for granted in educational practices and the context in which teaching occurs. I think, like me, some of you would recall that when you joined this profession as young teachers, some senior teachers would ask us, "What is your age?" And then they would, give a smile, and they would say, "Oh, jitni tumhari age hai, itna to mera tajruba hai," right? But sometimes, in some cases, that tajruba means that repeating the same things again and again and again, right? So reflective practice means that we constantly raise questions about our educational practices, especially the taken for granted in educational practices and the context in which teaching is occurring, because the needs of learners are changing, the circumstances are changing, the requirements of society are changing. So there is a need that we, constantly reflect on our practice. Why then we reflect on our practice? For professional and personal growth, to improve practice and understand it better. Practice in this case is teaching. To have better relationship with students and colleagues, right? Because when you think about what happened in your class, for instance, if in my class, no student asks questions, right? I should think about it, that why my students are not asking questions. Maybe I'm very scary to them. Maybe that they don't have the right kind of language to construct a question. Maybe they are conditioned in their school days, and they feel intimidated by the teacher, right? So if I, as a teacher, keep on reflecting and thinking deeply about my actions, I think that will give me some resolution or some way out to contribute in a creative, in creating a better society. So here is the crux of it, that when we think of education, the concept of education is not in isolation, that, I get a degree and I get a good job. Ultimately, education must contribute to improve societal practices, the standards of living in a society, right? To come to a deeper understanding of teaching and learning and what it means to be a teacher. Right? All these questions, a thinking teacher would be engaged in this kind of reflection. Now, when is the time to reflect? I think there are three different phases. First phase is before action, and action in this case means before going to class, right? Reflection before action, deep deliberations about actions, consequences, and implications, right? What am I going to teach? What are my objectives of this lesson? Are these objectives desirable, worthwhile, and meaningful? What activities can I plan to reach these objectives? What evaluation can I plan to know whether these objectives have been achieved? All these questions, you have to think through these questions as well. Not as a very detailed kind of lesson plan, but maybe in a bullet point form. But the second phase is during action. Okay? this is inside the class, when you are in class. Reflection during action involves dealing with immediate, unplanned situation, thinking on your feet, because, this is life, and you are dealing with, so many different, students who are coming from different backgrounds, and every day is a new day in teacher's life. So sometimes, things don't go as you have planned. This means a good teacher has to live from moment to moment. A good teacher has to be on his or her feet all the time. For instance, a situation emerges. How can I deal with a naughty student right now? Especially young teachers who, start this journey of teaching. They come across this kind of situation, right? That there is a student, and who always at this age, they try to attract the attention of other colleagues and peers, and they do something very funny, right? There are different ways of dealing with it, right? Should I, take it head on, or should I ask the student to see me after the class? So all these kind of decisions are with you. Should I deviate from my lesson plan to deal with this issue? What other ways can I handle this so that this student can understand it, right? And there are so many other things which can emerge, which you haven't planned. Right, now you have done your classroom, and after that, this is third phase of your reflection. Reflection after action. Reflection on the action after the action. How did things go? Did I achieve my objectives? If not, why? How else things should have been done? What can I do to make it better? What should be my next step? So all these, questions, that what things went well and why, what things didn't go well and why, and most important thing is, how can I improve when next time I go to class? Now, I think it's very important that as we are focusing on our practice, we should be focusing on ourselves as well. Normally, you ignore yourself whenever there is some investigation or some reflection or some research. You start from the other side of the table, right? But also, it's very important that you, as a person and as a professional, is important. And these questions must be asked. What are my strengths as a teacher? Right? Because in these teacher training workshops, this question is asked. People ask this question: what is the recipe of good teaching? Right? And I always, share with them that the best method or best strategy is personal method. Yeah, certain people have their own strengths, and it's up to them how they can exploit their strengths. What are my limitations at present? This is also very important. As one of our participants said, that if you think that you are perfect, that is the end of the day of your improvement. But for improvement, you have to have some idea. What are the areas of improvement? What are my limitations? And you have to be very honest to yourself. How can I improve myself? What do I want to improve? And these are two very important. What do I want to improve? And how can I improve that? What is the source of my ideas about teaching? How am I helping my students? What satisfaction does teaching give me? Is it just that it's a profession I'm doing it? Or this profession gives me some satisfaction as well? And then there are certain sources which help you to think about your own practice, that is teaching. That you think back on your practice. You can tape record your lesson, videotape it. Journal writing is very interesting, and I personally did it that after when I go to class, in the evening, I would write my impressions, what happened in the classroom and what were the things students enjoyed? Did I get the, my objectives achieved? And then, so my impressions, my reflections. So journal writing is another thing. Action research. Action research is that kind of research which teacher is in the center of research. And mostly it is the, problems which are related to teaching and students and teachers, right? Peer coaching is another very interesting. And as I can share with you, when I was in Khan University, this was very common, that we used to sit in each other's class and we used to give feedback. Critical thinking is very important. And this is not that easy, because in critical thinking, you have to give space for disagreement, right? But if you cannot give space to others for disagreement, this means that, it is just bookish thing, right?
Sajid, please connectivity check कीजिए. Thank you.
Yes, sir, I am checking.
देखिए connectivity.
Okay, I'm sorry, there was some issue, but I hope that you can hear me.
Please continue, sir.
Oh, I'm really sorry. There was an internet problem. So we are bringing the whole discussion to closure, that professional development is not a kind of incident that occurs once a while, that I did my PhD or I did my master's, I did that course. It is a process, and this process is continuous and lifelong. And as you can see, it's a cyclic process where you plan, you execute, and you observe, you reflect on that, and then next time you replan, you execute, you observe, you reflect, and it goes on. So this, this process of learning never ends in one's life. And as one of our participants said, that the day you think that you are perfect, that is the day of your intellectual death. I stop here. I think I took more time than was allotted to me. But if you have any questions, I know there must be a number of questions, but as I said, you can ask these questions now. I can leave my email and my mobile with you. But today I just try to look at some of the theoretical framework of 21st century. I picked just one skill that to me is the most important skill, that is creativity. And I focused on that, how we can, make our students more creative. And for that, we need to first look at the teachers, because only thinking teachers, only creative teachers can produce creative graduates. And for that, we focused on this idea of reflective practice and need for revisiting the role of teacher as a technician to a reflective practitioner. I stop here. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for excellent talk and very kind of you. And you concluded on a very important attribute. And if you look at the Bloom taxonomy, creativity comes at the top. And that is directly linked with the innovation. And that is where our universities can play a very important role. And that is where the teachers have a very big role to contribute, not only in education, but leading towards higher order thinking skill, and then engaging the faculty and students as a facilitator, but also leading towards creativity. But thank you so very much. You have explained things in a very simplistic way. Very kind of you for sparing time. And we have a few minutes question answer session. I would invite first Professor Khalid Masud Gondal, Vice Chancellor, King Edward Medical University, for comments. Any questions, sir? Welcome. Ji, sir, welcome.
So thank you very much. I think this was one of the wonderful webinar and the need of the time, teaching in 21st century, challenges and opportunity. I just wanted to share my challenges as the Vice Chancellor of the Medical University during COVID scenario, which we came across. In the COVID, we felt there were some challenges which we converted into the opportunity. We felt the need of certain medical specialists which were deficient during the COVID scenario, and these specialties, they were mainly the intensive care unit, emergency medicine and infectious diseases. So we converted this into the opportunity and we started the postgraduate program in these specialty so as to provide the other institution the human resource. Second, we felt the outdoor, they are closed and the patient, they do not have the accessibility with the doctors. So we created a department of telemedicine. I think we were discussing about the artificial intelligence, and telemedicine is one of the example of artificial intelligence. And so far, by the grace of Allah Almighty, we treated more than 13,000 patients, and Professor Dr. Fazal Khalid has already witnessed all these things. Then we adopted the model of hybrid medical education in under and postgraduate, and the teaching, training, monitoring, and assessment. And finally, I'm very happy to see the professor has discussed I think the character of the good teacher, the challenges, the opportunity, and the strategies to cope with those challenges. This is the era of competency-based medical education. 2 decades ago, the model of medical education, that was the apprenticeship. Everybody was used to follow the teacher. Then there was a product-based and the process-based. Now there is an outcome-based and competency-based medical education, started from Canada as a CanMed model, then ACDME competency of US. Now in Pakistan, in medical university, we have started this competency-based medical education. And I'm sure today's lecture would help us to strengthen our competency-based medical education. So I'm very grateful to the Punjab Higher Education Commission, its chairman, Dr. Fazal Khalid, and Dr. Shahid Siddiqui for this wonderful seminar and a great discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. We have with us our commission member and Vice Chancellor, Mian Imran Masood. Sir, would you like to make comments, sir? Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Fazal, and thank you so much for inviting me on this very important webinar. I think it was a very well thought of suggestion to invite Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Sahab. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Sahab. It was a wonderful presentation.
How are you?
Well, challenges की यहाँ पे बात हुई है. Yes, there are going to be a lot of challenges which everybody has to face, and we have to. जी, sorry, जरा ये connect. Thank you, sir. Very kind. आपको बड़े अरसे बाद देखा, you mashallah looking very fresh and dynamic as always. तो इसमें ये है कि जी we have to cope up with the requirements because we have to prepare our students as a product of the world. और उसमें हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को जो है वो मैचलेस किस्म का क्वालिटी एजुकेशन जो है वो देना बहुत ज़रूरी है. उसके लिए टीचर्स को तैयार करना बहुत ज़रूरी है और उसके लिए ट्रेनिंग जो है वो बहुत ही ज़रूरी है. हम लोग तो वी आर नाउ मूविंग टुवर्ड्स अ डिजिटल एरा की तरफ हम चले गए हैं और आइंदा तो सारा चीज़ डिजिटल ही होनी है. उसमें यूनिवर्सिटीज़ विल हैव टू प्रिपेयर देमसेल्व्स टू use all these new methods of teaching and research, जिसके लिए जो है वो ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं वो बहुत ज़रूरी हैं. Artificial intelligence AI जो है वो that is very famous and common these days in the modern world, जहाँ पर दुनिया जो है वो AI का even in education जो है वो इस्तेमाल कर रही है और AI को वो content feed कर देते हैं, data feed करते हैं और AI जो है वो स्टूडेंट्स की हद तक भी बता सकता है कि स्टूडेंट्स जो हैं वो व्हाट इज देयर वीकर एरिया एंड हाउ मच कंसंट्रेशन डू दे नीड ऑन व्हिच सब्जेक्ट सो एआई का यूजेज जो है वो दैट हैज बिकम वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट नाउ. सो वी नीड टू गेट अब्रेस्ट ऑफ व्हाट इज एआई की हमें ट्रेनिंग और ये सारे सिस्टम्स हमें सारे अपनाने हैं. माय क्वेश्चन इज दैट since we are talking about the future of our country and future of our students and challenges teaching में जो आने हैं, तो आया ये जो हमारे जो डिपार्टमेंट है, हमारे मिनिस्ट्रीज जो हैं और हमारा हायर एजुकेशन कमीशन जो है वो चूँकि वो स्टैंडर्ड्स और क्वालिटी की बात करता है, तो आया उनके जहन में भी ये बातें हैं? Are they working on these challenges and opportunities in the coming this 21st century में? So I would like to ask Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, what is the vision which the HEC has now? Are we working on these lines? Are we thinking about 50 years down the road? What is going to be the future of our education system? What is going to be the role of the universities? What is going to be the role of the private sector universities? How strong the college sector is in Pakistan? How strong is the school system in Pakistan in terms of getting quality and a great foundation of a young child? ये सारी चीजें जो हैं ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है. तो ये 2-3 बातें थी जो मैं आपसे शेयर करना चाह रहा था. जी, थैंक यू सर. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Shahid Saab, for comments, please.
Well, all these questions are very relevant, very important, but the problem is that you are asking these questions to the wrong person because, only the people in HEC in Islamabad can respond to these questions. I can just, but I can see when these questions are being asked, the passion and Mian Sahab has for education. Since I've been, working on the education policies in Pakistan since 1947, I can just share with you that the last budget, the allocated budget for education was less than 2%. And I think there is no need of further commentary on that. And that is what is the priority for us, for education for us, which is very kind of, this is a point of concern for people like you and people like us.
Thank you very much, sir. So of course, quality of education is also linked with the resources and the financial resources in particular to be provided along with many other things. Thank you very much. We also have with us Professor Dr. Rukhsana Kausar, Vice Chancellor, Women University, Sialkot. Madam, over to you for comments, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I was listening to Dr. Siddiqui's talk and it's very fascinating. in fact, he was talking about how to change the attitude of teachers, particularly very, very important. But I was wondering that shouldn't we start from the basic education from school? Because in school, we basically are making children memorize, and rote learning and creative thinking and even asking questions are discouraged. And it goes with our obedience culture in families, and parents don't encourage asking questions at home. So shouldn't it be that we are focusing more at higher education? It's very, very important, of course, because they have to create and innovate. But at the same time, so much conditioning has taken place in earlier stage, starting from home to school to college and then university. So isn't it really little unrealistic expectation from a university student to switch on and become off, switch it off and then on to another mode? Number one. Number two, sir, of course, we are looking into the era which is evolving, and there is bombardment of information around, not only for us, for our students, which becomes very challenging for us to manage from student perspective as well as from teachers' perspective. So do we have to also consider in mind that expansion of universities and teachers who are not skilled, and finding particularly university professors across different universities a huge challenge. Let aside that we are expecting them to become a creative teacher, or I'm just trying to be realistic from this scenario, that it's very, very good to expect, but at the end of the day, realities are actually posing huge challenges for us. Moving from when it was COVID situation, moving from face-to-face situation to using technology was uphill task. And now over the period of time, I think it's very important to also see that how attitudes of students have changed. For example, if you ask them to come on campus, they are not ready because they have become very comfortable sitting at home. So all this scenario has to be taken into account for equipping ourselves for future, of course, challenges. And also considering that this is not a conventional role which we had 20 or 50 years ago. The teacher is, as Dr. Saab was very well rightly saying, that it's only knowledge is only with the teacher, and teacher is expecting them sitting. There are human beings. We are expecting that we can bombard them with knowledge and they can't ask us any question. This time is gone. So maybe we have to revamp. And also one question which I was thinking about is, are all statutory bodies, they fix us from starting from Board of Studies to get the curriculum approved, and then Board of Faculty, which would vet it, then moving on to Academic Council, and then going on to, syndicate, who is ultimately approving the curriculum. Does it leave any room for a specific teacher to actually redo or to add something, because that teacher most probably would be questioned? So we have moved from annual system to a semester system, and semester system require us to keep on improving our curriculum and of course pedagogical strategies too. But at the same time, we are fixed with the system which was the previous one. So maybe the policymakers have to think on those lines too, in order to update our system and allowing room for such kind of improvement. But I must say that Dr. Siddiqui's talk was very impressive, and we all must put collective efforts to think on these lines. And these are simply thoughts shared, that we, even if we want to do something, we are confined to actually deliver to an extent a teacher would like. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity. And you are always come up with a resource person who is really thorough professional. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Amir, Vice Chancellor, MNS UET Multan. Dr. over to you, please. Probably Dr. is connectivity problem. Dr. Afzal, Vice Chancellor. Gigi, go ahead, Dr. please.
Sir, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for conducting such an important workshop on such an important issue. I believe selection of a teacher is the most important issues which mostly Vice Chancellor confront in their tenure. And if a wrong this teacher is selected, you have to bear with it for 35 years. Or you can, in other words, say that 35 generations are destroyed. So this was this workshop was the need of the hour today, how we are converting ourselves now from this taking classes, online classes to physical classes. Although universities are facing some problems, I feel that जैसे कहते हैं कि ताली दोनों हाथों से बजती है, ना स्टूडेंट पढ़ना चाहते हैं. I'm sorry to say that टीचरों के साथ भी कुछ मसाइल हैं, वो पढ़ाना भी नहीं चाहते. Now we have to change our attitude. Government is spending this. Our stakeholders, one of the government, they are spending billions of dollars. You know better than me what is happening. What's the situation in research? People ask me that what is the outcome of this research? Every year NRPU projects being filed, and what is the outcome? So now we have to change our attitudes. This is my feeling, and I want to congratulate you once again and the resource person who have conducted such. I'm sorry, I was busy with some meetings were happening in my office, and I couldn't give the full time, but this is very important issue which you touched today, and this series of lectures will continue. Thank you once again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sahab. Thank you. Dr. Afzal, Vice Chancellor, Baba Guru Nanak University. Dr. Sahab, over to you, please.
So mic unmuted, kindly unmute कर लें mic को, mute है mic. Thank you.
शायद connectivity problem है, तो I would request Dr. Ehsan to make comment or question you would like to ask.
Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Sahab, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Sahab.
Dr. Afzal, welcome. Thank you.
It's really appreciating that you have arranged such a wonderful session. We have listened Dr. Siddiqui sir after a long time. It's really very impressive presentation. And Dr. Rukhsana have already discussed so many things about today's presentation. Sometimes we have to follow all the procedures, the academic council and the syndicates and so and so. But in this current era, we must confess that this type of training is the need of the day. We must, all the old people must accept as well that this is not only the requirement of the youngsters. Even the old teachers, if they are static, if they are not understanding what the teaching is today, Dr. Siddiqui has explained it in a very well manner, and we must arrange such a type of training for all the universities, for all our faculty members. Sometimes only a few number of participants are here who listen today. Dr. Siddiqui Saab, it was really very impressive, but I would request PHEC to arrange such type of presentation lectures for all the university, because the teacher are the main, the role model. They have to create a generation, and if generations are not produced like the teachers today, Dr. Siddiqui have mentioned, then sometimes we will waste our time. So I would again request Dr. to arrange such of a meeting again and again, and especially for university level and for the whole faculty member, not only the youngsters. Sometimes we arrange meetings at this session only for the youngsters, but I think it's the need of the day, and even the old faculty member, they also need this type of presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Dr. Sahab. So nice of you. We can take a couple of quick questions. Dr. Ehsan, you would like to make a comment or question? Welcome. जी माइक अनम्यूट कर लीजिए सर.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dr. Fazal, for arranging this workshop, and Dr. Shahid Siddiqui. But my question, I see a lot of professors here who are the product of this transmission-based system. So if there is a new concept of this transformation-based system, it doesn't mean that transmission-based system failed, because we are the products of this system. And I have seen my teachers who are very legendary teachers and were the product of this system. So definitely the things they went wrong when teachers stopped this process of reflection. And the second thing that was refreshed by Professor Sir was self-reflection is a very good tool. But being a student of this self-reflection process, I don't agree with the story of this Malcolm X, because what he actually did, if it was only to increase the supply of the rabbits for hunting, it was all right. But if he was in competition and he somehow created a shortcut sitting halfway, then this story does not fit into my, because their transformation doesn't mean that you start by bypassing the norms of any trade or anything. So these are two questions that we need to ask from us, that whether this transmission-based system, it actually failed or not. But secondly, about this rabbit and Malcolm X, that in my personal view, it was an act of disturbing the norms of this hunting process. Otherwise, thank you very much for enlightening us with this.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you for your comment. We have two more questions, and then I will request Professor Siddiqui to comment on these. Naveed Ahmed, over to you, Janab, if you would like to ask any question, Mr. Naveed Ahmed. जी माइक अनम्यूट कर लीजिए जनाब. आपका माइक ऑन नहीं है.
Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm a student of Dr. Shahid Siddiqui. 30 years back, I attended ATC's diploma course in Lahore, and he taught us the same subject, teaching methodologies. And he was my ideal teacher, and still he is. And I have one question, and the question is that 30 years back, Dr. Shahid was making the same comments that knowledge is not static and it's active and other things. And those theories were introduced by him 30 years back. My question to him is that over these 3 decades, have you witnessed any change in Pakistani society, that Pakistani policymakers or teachers, they have been successful in adopting these modern methodologies? Because in public level institutions, Urdu medium schools or public institutions, we still see rote learning sort of things. How can we improve that? So we know these things since long. 3 decades back you introduced, and other people also introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed Sab. Thank you. I would request Professor Shahid to respond, and then we can conclude this webinar.
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Fazal. And it was so nice to see you and see you very fresh. Some of you might not be knowing that we were together in GIK, and he's looking a little younger than that time today. And Dr. Naveed, thanks very much. I recall those times when we were together in Lahore. Well, coming back to some of the points raised by Dr. Rukhsana, I totally agree with you that our school system needs a lot of revamping. And whenever there is CSS results and there is bashing on universities, which is totally unfair, because that is the basis of our education. And if we compare, school system of Pakistan with other countries, right from grade 1, there are project-based teaching and students, they, are engaged in research. In our case, our students, at MPhil or PhD level, for the first time, they use this word of research. So I totally agree with you that if we want to make a holistic change in Pakistan, we need to revamp the whole system of our schooling. You also said the curriculum and that there are constraints and obstacles. I totally agree with you, but I would like to differ slightly with respect that there are two approaches whenever I go to workshops, and these problems are known to us. Everybody knows that. But one approach is that majority of the people take this approach that problem A, B, C, D, and nothing can be done. The second approach is taken by minority people, that these problems are there. The classroom size, the curriculum is outdated, the textbooks, the assessment system. But should we wait until that time when all these constraints are removed and only then we should start working? These people in minority, they think that no, these constraints are going to be there for quite some time, but we need to create our way in the presence of these constraints. So I think that most of the participants in today's, we are very senior people, that these constraints are going to be there. What is needed is that we need to be a little more creative to make our ways. I think there was one comment about the transmission-based. I think this is not an argument that since we were taught in transmission-based, so we are good. And a similar kind, when I was teaching at GIK with Dr. Fazal Khalid, I heard same kind of comment that, in our times, there was no communication skills course or academic writing course, and we were very good engineers. I think with the passage of time, new circumstances emerged and new needs emerged, and there is a need to revisit. When I use this term transmission-based, I think I refer to a Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire, who uses the term banking concept of knowledge. That this is that kind of knowledge, as in bank, we go and put something in the bank, and then take it out. Similarly, in transmission-based paradigm, students, they rote learn without understanding, and they reproduce in the examination paper, and they get A grades. This is transmission-based, that they are getting good grades without any change. But on a note of caution, I clarified that I don't take these three boxes as separate boxes. I look at them as epicentric circles, that inside is the transmission. We are not totally, moving away from it. There is inside this transmission base, there are certain ideas which are going to be there. But the outer side, two circles, transmission, transaction and transformation, there is a lot of room for transformation and change. Dr. Rukhsana also talked about the flood of information, which is there. And that is why there is need of developing critical thinking skills among our students, that they should know that what is relevant, what is credible, and what is not. Otherwise, they're going to be very confused. I think Dr. Naveed asked this question that 30 years before, I was talking about the same things and any change. I think that I did find a change, but in private sector. I think I can share with you my experience working in LUMS, in Khan University, in GIK, and LSE, and all of them are private sectors. I think they are totally different from the public. But the problem is that they are ivory towers. They are ivory towers and they are elite places, right? And we cannot claim that a real change has come in our mainstream education system. Because to bring a change in mainstream education system, we have to move our public sector educational institutions. And there is a lot to be done in this, sector. And, resources is one, training is another. But there is, I personally think, my observation is that educational governance is, to me, is the most important component which needs to be revisited. But answering to your question that, yes, I did see change over the period of time, but mostly in private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I think because of the time constraint, I see some of the hands, but you're welcome to contact Professor Shahid Siddiqui or send us email and we'll get the response. Let me take this opportunity to thank Professor Shahid Siddiqui. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us time and on a very important lecture. And I think there's a lot that we have learned and it was good learning experience. I'm sure all have enjoyed. I have certainly. And as a leader of the academia and higher education institutions, I think academia and teachers and faculty members have a very big role to play in transforming the youth and linking up with the challenges of modern time. And these are some of the things which Professor Shahid Siddiqui has highlighted. और वो जो फ्राज का एक शेर है कि अपने हिस्से की शम्मा जलाते जाएं. I think that would allow to overcome many challenges that we are facing, and that's why our university teachers and vice chancellors are there to help and guide the students and the young faculty members. And I'm sure that this will result into a big change. And I can share that in engineering, we have been able to implement outcome-based education. And as a result of that, there is a big recognition at the international level as far as our engineering programs are concerned. The change is slow, no doubt about it. There are 450 programs and only 200 programs in Pakistan have been able to adopt this new methodology, incorporating all the requirement of quality assurance. So from that perspective, if you take the lead, even no matter how small it is, it's going to result into a big change. Once again, thank you all for joining in this webinar. And Dr. Sab, thank you so very much for your excellent talk, and we look forward to have similar kind of sessions with you in future. Thank you so very much, and Allah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.